give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Mustafa.
Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me start by expressing our warmest thanks to the Kenyan government and the United Nations Office for Counter-terrorism, in person to General Voronkov, for organizing this meeting, this conference on the prevention of violent extremism. It couldn't be more timely and topical event. It is a great pleasure for me to represent here the European Union. As the European Commissioner responsible for migration, homeland security, home affairs and citizenship, I can tell you and share with you that I have personally witnessed two key challenges that link the European and African countries. The multiple terrorist attacks in Europe and Africa, and the crisis of human displacement arriving on our shores. More than ever, Europe and Africa's prosperity and security are intertwined. We need each other to address these global issues, and this event today is a unique opportunity, but also a common challenge and duty. Duty to join our forces in fighting in an effective way violent extremism across the African and European continents. Africa has sadly become another critical front line for our collective fight against terrorism. From the Horn of Africa to West Africa, conflicts are multiplying. Violent extremism is emerging as a convenient ideology, offering simplistic, nihilistic answers to the challenges our societies are facing. On the other hand, climate change, technology, demography, and human mobility are reinforcing this trend. And while all these drivers are becoming more and more interconnected and mutually reinforcing, our response is not there yet. We are still operating in institutional, geographical, or political silos in confronting terrorism. We saw the attacks in Kenya in January, the attacks in Mali in June, the attacks in Tunisia 2 weeks ago, many others before. We see the situation in Libya deteriorating. We cannot effectively cope with these risks in our efforts if our efforts remain fragmented. Fragmentation makes us all equally vulnerable. This was, believe me, a hard lesson we learned in Europe. And at the beginning, we tried a lot in order, first of all, to convince our family, member states of the European Union, to start cooperating together, to exchange information, and show mutually trust to each other. No single nation, institution, or organization can defeat terrorism in Europe, in Africa, or anywhere else. Terrorism does not recognize, negates borders. The internet is our most important battleground nowadays. Maybe Daesh has been defeated on the ground, but not on this battleground of internet yet. That is where I devoted a great deal of attention since day one of my mandate as Commissioner. In the year 2015, we took the initiative to set up the EU Internet Forum, where the biggest, the most important internet platforms were invited, and they responded positively. They worked with us in full trust and understood the need to act against terrorist content online. When we saw that we needed more companies to sign up, to come on board, we proposed legislation to ensure everybody in the future acts against terrorist propaganda. The same challenges appear across the globe. We saw the online propaganda as a catalyst for terrorist attacks in the United States and recently in New Zealand. This challenge is common also for Kenya and the whole African continent. As citizens become more and more connected, it is the internet that is our most important frontier against radicalization. Prevention, not just reaction, should be our priority. Our societies need to be nurtured to become more resilient to violent extremism. Hard security measures are only one side of the coin. Trust. Trust is the key word and should translate in practical terms by exchanging more information and intelligence. Societal measures to remove the root causes of violent extremism are equally important. Investing in education, as Mr. Guterres mentioned before, is a shield against radicalization and the driver in promoting tolerance. National mechanisms for monitoring radicalization in prisons and after release are indispensable. Also, a fight against nationalism and populism. These big threats for our democracies, for our cohesion. De-radicalization, rehabilitation, and reintegration go together to prevent the further spread of terrorist ideology. The collapse of Daesh increased the risk from the relocation of foreign terrorist fighters. Their dispersion means that the virus of extremism can spread further and wider. I know this issue is of great concern for Kenya, with the recruitment of hundreds of young Kenyans in Al-Shabaab. Stronger external borders, reinforced information sharing, more trust and closer cooperation between neighbors has been our approach to deal with traveling fighters in Europe. You, the African countries, are the key players and our key partners in the fight against terrorism in this region. And we are ready, believe me, we are ready to share the lessons we learn and our resources to reinforce your efforts. Our partnership so far has focused in particular on the Horn of Africa and the Sahel. These regions have already benefited from EU cooperation programs to strengthen the security capacities of national and regional authorities, but also to help remove the root causes of instability and violent extremism. Our first counter-radicalization project outside the European Union was here in Kenya. The projects Strive Horn of Africa and Strive Kenya have been reinforcing peace, stability, and inclusive economic cooperation for youth in marginalized areas in Kenya. These initiatives can make a difference and change things on the ground. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, personally I'm a passionate multilateralist. We all know that this is our most important achievement after the Second World War. We have to maintain it and make it stronger, and I fully agree with the Secretary General has been advocating during the last 2 years and more. The roles of the African Union and the United Nations are essential, and I want to stress how much I supported and encourage the initiative of Mr. Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, to set up the Office of Counter-terrorism at the beginning already of his mandate and put security on the top of the global agenda, which was not the case before. In April, we signed a cooperation agreement with the Office of Under-Secretary General Voronkov, and I'm very pleased that we have put our collaboration on even stronger footing. This can be a template also for African countries and the African Union. Together, we are larger than the sum of our component parts. We live in an interconnected world. Effective action against terrorism requires a concerted, multilateral, and multifaceted response that is global, regional and national, with a focus on impact at the most local level. The European Union can be Africa's closest partner and ally in this effort, and not only there. All fields of cooperation are open and invite us to do more together in a spirit of shared responsibility, true partnership, and genuine trust. And this is the last and most important term that should prevail in our relations: trust. Thank you very much for your attention.